Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here today. We are going to unpack what has got to be one of the most incredible ironies in global business history. We're looking at a story of raw survival, completely unexpected consequences, and just sheer human ingenuity. Today, we are exploring how an unintended consequence, a strict religious law of all things, actually birthed a legendary multi-billion-dollar industry. Okay, let's dive into this. How did a strict ban on jewelry accidentally create a multi-billion-dollar luxury empire? I mean, it sounds completely counterintuitive, right? Usually, when a government or a leader bans a product, well, that industry dies. It's game over. But in this specific case, a severe restriction actually forced a group of highly skilled artisans to completely reinvent their future. So we're going to trace this fascinating timeline going all the way from 16th century survival mode right up to modern-day innovation. All right, setting the stage with Section 1, the ban on luxury. I want you to really picture the streets of Geneva back in the year 1541. It was definitely not the bustling, super wealthy global hub we think of today. It was austere. The reformist leader Jean Calvin was in charge, and he enacted these incredibly strict sumptuary laws. Under Calvinist doctrine, all ostentatious clothing and decorative jewelry were completely banned. No flash, no flair, zero bling. Suddenly, Geneva's highly skilled jewelers, enamelers, and master goldsmiths were staring down complete ruin. Their entire livelihood was outlawed overnight. But this is exactly where human ingenuity kicks in, all thanks to a functional loophole. Geneva's master goldsmiths realized they had to pivot, and fast. They took their intricate, macro-level metalworking skills and applied them to crafting mechanical timepieces, specifically pocket watches. So the absolutely crucial point here is that because these watches were classified as practical, functional instruments for timekeeping rather than just pretty personal adornments, they were legally permitted under Calvinist doctrine. These artisans literally saved their livelihoods by slipping right through a functional loophole. Moving right along to Section 2, the Huguenot master craftsman. Fast forward a bit to 1685. King Louis XIV revoked the Edict of Nantes over in France, and this sparked a massive refugee crisis. It caused approximately 200,000 French Protestants to flee their home country. Now, many of these refugees were wealthy, highly skilled artisans known as Huguenots, and because Geneva was already this established Calvinist stronghold, people actually called it the Protestant Rome, it became a primary destination for these fleeing capitalists and craftsmen. And these refugees, they didn't just bring capital with them. They brought unparalleled expertise. The Huguenots contributed incredibly advanced micromechanics and math-based horological knowledge. They also brought these highly sophisticated cross-border trade networks and, interestingly, a deep-seated culture of absolute discretion, which was really born out of their history of persecution. By combining their forces with the local talent, which, by the way, led to the formation of the Watchmakers Guild of Geneva as early as 1601, they forever elevated Swiss horology. They took a desperate local survival tactic and turned it into a world-class industry. Which leads us directly into Section 3, farmers and the establishage. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how the industry managed to scale. As the Geneva Guild became a little too rigid, a jeweler named Daniel Jean Richard helped pioneer a brand new system called the établissage. He took watchmaking up into the rugged Jura Mountains and introduced this brilliant decentralized manufacturing model. Think of it like a giant puzzle. During the incredibly long, severe mountain winters, the Jura farmers were largely idle. So they used their fine motor skills to mass-produce standardized watch components right in their own home workshops. Then, when spring finally rolled around, all these separate parts were collected and assembled centrally. And this built a massive, undeniable competitive advantage. See, in the 18th century, the British actually dominated watchmaking. They had brilliant masters and incredibly accurate timepieces, sure, but they produced them in very low volumes inside central workshops. The Swiss, on the other hand, utilizing this lean, decentralized établissage system, achieved high-volume, low-cost production. By perfectly merging their beautiful Genevan decorative arts with this rural mechanical efficiency, Switzerland was eventually able to just completely capture the global market from the British. And they didn't just compete on volume either. They totally took over on precision, hitting some mind-blowing horological milestones along the way. In 1770, Perrellet invents the self-winding watch, using a rotor mechanism that is literally the ancestor of the automatic watches we wear today. In 1795, Breguet invents the tourbillon, placing the balance wheel in a rotating cage to counteract gravity's pull on a pocket watch. Genius. And in 1816, Moynet invents the chronograph, the very first precision instrument for measuring elapsed time. The Swiss completely left the competition in the dust by merging high-volume production with this totally unmatched chronometric precision. But, as we know, dominance can be fleeting. Section 4. The Quartz Crisis. So, by the late 1960s, the Swiss had a virtual monopoly, holding about 50% of the entire global market. But, dominance often leads to complacency. Even though a Swiss engineer actually developed an early electronic movement prototype back in 1954, it was the Japanese manufacturer Seiko that totally changed the world in December 1969. They introduced the Astron, the world's first commercial quartz watch. It replaced all those traditional mechanical gears with a battery-powered quartz crystal oscillator. It was vastly more accurate, incredibly cheap to make, and, well, it instantly rendered centuries of mechanical engineering obsolete. I mean, just look at the numbers. The sheer devastation that followed was staggering. Between 1970 and 1983, the Swiss industry experienced a visceral, terrifying collapse. The number of active watchmaking companies plummeted from 1,600 down to just 600. Sector employment just nosedived from 90,000 workers to a mere 33,000. It was an absolute economic catastrophe. Over half the companies vanished. Actually, scratch that, way more than half vanished. And a massive chunk of the country's workforce lost their livelihoods in the blink of an eye. So how do you survive a blow like that? Section 5. The Luxury Pivot. Enter a brilliant consultant named Nicholas G. Hayek. Under the guidance of creditor banks, Hayek oversaw this massive merger of failing Swiss conglomerates to create what we now know today as the Swatch Group. Now, a traditional mechanical movement had about 91 intricate moving parts. This wild new Swatch had just 51. It was built with fully automated assembly and sealed up in a plastic case. It was, for all intents and purposes, a cheap, disposable fashion watch. But it was a massive runaway success. It sold millions and injected some desperately needed cash flow and liquidity right back into the Swiss industrial base. But here's the thing. That cheap plastic watch, that was only step one of the Hayek strategy. It was pure genius. Step one was mass market stabilization via the quartz swatch. Basically just survive the bleeding. But step two is where the real magic happened. Reposition mechanical watches as high-end luxury assets. The Swiss realized, hey, we can no longer compete with Asia on just telling time, so they stopped trying. Instead, they brilliantly marketed the mechanical watch as an emotional, artistic investment. They sold the centuries of heritage, the intricate craftsmanship, and the pure, unadulterated status of the object. Which brings us to our final chapter, Section 6, the Swiss-made shield. The Swiss desperately needed a way to guarantee to the rest of the world that this new luxury pivot was totally authentic. So they created a powerful economic shield, establishing strict legal criteria back in 1971. To bear that famous Swiss-made label, the movement absolutely must be Swiss, it must be cased inside Switzerland, and the final quality inspection must occur in Switzerland. This isn't just some catchy marketing slogan. It's a literal legal fortress that protects their domestic ecosystem, ensuring that the high-value craftsmanship remains securely within the country's borders and absolutely guaranteeing global trust. And man, that brings us beautifully full circle. The mechanical watch ceased to be a mere tool that tells time. It became an artistic investment and a luxury status symbol. This is the ultimate tool to treasure motif. Remember where we started today? Back in 1541, the pocket watch only existed because it was classified as a functional tool, saving those poor goldsmiths from a strict luxury ban. Today, that exact same product is the world's premier luxury item, completely detached from its original requirement to simply tell the time. Which leaves us with a really fascinating thought to end on today. If constraints breed ultimate creativity, what modern industry is currently being forced to invent its own future right now? History shows us time and time again that the biggest crises often birth the most legendary innovations. I want to sincerely thank you, the Focus Learner, for joining me today on this explainer. Keep looking for those functional loopholes in your own life, and I will see you next time.